Tudor Vernon Parfitt is a British historian, writer, broadcaster, traveller and adventurer. He specialises in the study of Jewish communities around the world, particularly in Africa, Asia and the Americas. Some of these communities have been recognised only since the late 20th century as having ancient Jewish origins. Parfitt is Emeritus Professor of Modern Jewish Studies at the School of Oriental and African Studies, where he was the founding director of the Center for Jewish Studies. He is now Distinguished Professor at Florida International University, Director of its Global Jewish Studies program, and Alumni Fellow at the Hutchins Center, Harvard College, and Senior Associate Fellow at the Oxford Center for Hebrew and Jewish Studies. He is a Fellow of the Royal Historical Society. Parfitt has published some 70 articles and written, edited or translated 24 books. Early life and education. He was born Vernon Tudor Parfitt in Porth, Wales, in 1944, as the son of Vernon and Margaret Parfitt. He was educated at Loughborough Grammar School. In 1964, Parfitt spent a gap year with voluntary service overseas in Jerusalem, where he worked with handicapped people, some of whom were Holocaust survivors. Upon his return to Britain, he studied Hebrew and Arabic at the University of Oxford. In 1968 he was awarded the Good and Day Fellowship at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He completed a D.Phil at Oxford with David Patterson and Albert Aurani on the history of the Jews in Palestine and the relations with the Muslim neighbors. He expanded it for publication by the Royal Historical Society. Marriage and family. He married Jean McWilliam and they had 2 children together, Justin and Natasha. The couple divorced. Academic career. In 1972 Parfitt was appointed lecturer in Hebrew language, literature and history at the University of Toronto, Canada. In 1974 he was appointed Parkes Fellow at the Parkes Institute for the Study of Jewish, Non-Jewish Relations at the University of Southampton in England. Shortly afterward, he took up a lectureship in modern Hebrew at SOAS. His first body of work interrogated the received wisdom about the nature of the revival of the Hebrew language. His main academic interests have been the Sephardi, Mizrahi communities of the Muslim world, Jewish-Muslim relations, Hebrew and Hebrew literature, Judaizing movements, Jewish genetic identity and the discourses surrounding it, attitudes towards Jews and Zionism in South Asia, and Jews in Asia and Africa. Throughout the 1980s, Parfitt undertook covert lecture tours to Jewish refusnik groups in the Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia. In 1985 he spent several months visiting the various Jewish communities of Asia, including Thailand, Singapore and Japan. He interested the Emperor's brother, Prince Mikasa, in the Jewish communities of the East. In 1987 he was asked by the Jewish community of Singapore to write an official history of the island's Jews. The same year he visited Syria to write about the situation of its Jewish community for the minority rights group. He was arrested by the Syrian secret police, the Mukhabarat, during his trip. He describes these events in his first travel book, The 13th Gate. In the early 1990s, Parfitt conducted fieldwork in Yemen, researching its ancient Jewish community, and wrote a book on the subject. In The Road to Redemption, he said that the Yemenite Jews had emigrated to Israel as a result of extreme prejudice, persecution, legal disabilities and because of the rapidly changing economy of the Indian Ocean region. He also researched and presented a BBC documentary called The Last Exile on this subject. In 2002 he published his Lost Tribes of Israel. The history of the myth. His theme is that the creation of Israelite and Jewish identities throughout the world, from the Americas to Papua New Guinea, was an innate feature of Western colonialism whereby Judaic identities were constructed on the colonial frontier as a means of comprehending a wide range of religious manifestations. In some cases the colonial effort was supported by the idea that indigenous cultures were descended from the biblical lost tribes of Israel. Origins of the Lemba. In 1984 Parfitt was commissioned by the London-based minority rights group to write a report on the Ethiopian Jews who had fled Ethiopia. They had migrated to escape persecution and famine, but were dying in large numbers in the refugee camps along the border between the Sudan and Ethiopia. His visits to the camps coincided with Israel's Operation Moses, which rescued thousands of Ethiopian Jews and took them to Israel. Parfitt's book on the operation was translated into many languages. He later was selected as the vice president of the Society for the Study of Ethiopian Jewry. Subsequently he turned his attention to another black and apparently Jewish group, the Lemba tribe of southern Africa. They claimed descent from some ancient Jewish population. He published Journey to the Vanished City about his 6-month journey throughout Africa, in which he traced the origins of the tribe to the eastern end of the Hadramaut in Yemen. There he discovered the ancient city of Sina and origins of the tribe in some migrating Jewish traders. TV programs about the discoveries, a major newspaper coverage, brought Parfitt international attention. He was nicknamed the British Indiana Jones, after a film character. Seeking more data in 1996 and later years Parfitt organized wide DNA studies of Lemba males. These found a high proportion of paternal Semitic ancestry, DNA that is common to both Arabs and Jews from the Middle East. The work confirmed that the male line had descended from a few ancestors from southern Arabia. In recognition of this work, he was made corresponding fellow of the Académie Royale des Sciences d'Outre-mer. The Lemba have a tradition of having brought a drum, or ngoma, from the Middle East centuries ago. Parfitt noted that the description of the ngoma was similar to that of the biblical Ark of the Covenant. He observed that rabbinic sources maintain that there were two Arks of the Covenant. One, the ceremonial Ark covered with gold, which was eventually placed in the Holy of Holies in the Temple. The other, the Ark of War, which had been carved from wood by Moses and was a relatively simple affair. Parfitt proposed that the Ark of War may have been taken by Jews across the Jordan River and, citing Islamic sources, suggests that they carried it as they migrated south while under rule by Arab tribes. The Lemba claimed to have brought their Ark ngoma from Arabia at some point in the past. Parfitt rediscovered it in 2007. Parfitt read The Lost Ark of the Covenant, solving the 2,500-year-old mystery of the fabled biblical Ark, documenting his findings. Associated documentaries were aired on Channel 4 and the History Channel. The BBC reported that the discovery of the ngoma instilled pride among many of the Lemba. In 2010 Parfitt was invited to address a symposium in Harare on the subject. Attendees included the Cabinet and Vice President John Nkomo. The ngoma has been exhibited at the Zimbabwe Museum of Human Sciences. The authentic ngoma was briefly on display but was soon replaced by a replica. The Lemba Ark is now recognized internationally as a major religious artifact in Africa. Parfitt subsequently turned his interest to Jewish communities in India and the Pacific. His DNA work on the Bene Israel, the origins of whom were obscure, showed that they were descended from males from the Middle East, consistent with their oral histories of origin. These successes led other Judaizing groups, including the Gogodala tribe of Papua New Guinea, to seek help in determining their own origins. Parfitt's pioneering work has contributed to the expanding study of the spread of Judaism and Judaism Judaism movements throughout the African continent. Publications. Books. Parfitt, Team Macaulay and Trevisan E. eds. Memory and Ethnicity. Ethnic Museums in Israel and the Diaspora. Cambridge Scholars Press. Parfitt, T. Black Jews in Africa and the Americas, New York. Harvard University Press. Parfitt, T. and E. Bruder, African Zion Studies in Black Judaism. Cambridge Scholars Press. Parfitt, T. The Lost Ark of the Covenant, London, New York. HarperCollins. Parfitt, T. and E. Gerova, Y. Genetics, Mass Media, and Identity. A Case Study of the Genetic Research on the Lemba and B'nai Israel, London. Routledge. Parfitt, T. and Trevisan E. The Jews of Ethiopia, The Birth of an Elite, London. Routledge. Parfitt, T. The Lost Tribes of Israel, The History of a Myth, London. Weidenfeld and Nicholson. Parfitt, T. and E. Gerova, Y. Jews, Muslims and Mass Media, Mediating the Other, London. Routledge Curzon. Parfitt, T. and Trevisan E. Judaism Movements, Studies in the Margins of Judaism, London. Routledge Curzon. Parfitt, T. Israel and Ishmael, Studies in Muslim-Jewish Relations, London. Curzon. Parfitt, T. and Trevisan E. The Beta Israel in Ethiopia and Israel, Studies on the Ethiopian Jews, London. Curzon. Parfitt, T. The Road to Redemption, The Jews of the Yemen 1900 to 1950. Brill's Series in Jewish Studies Volume 17. Leiden. Brill, Parfitt, T. and Abramson G. Jewish Education and Learning, published in honor of Dr. David Patterson on the occasion of his 70th birthday. Chur, Switzerland. Harwood Academic Publishers. Parfitt, T. Kaplan S. and Trevisan E. Between Africa and Zion, Proceedings of the First International Congress of the Society for the Study of Ethiopian Jewry, Jerusalem, Ben Zvi Institute. Parfitt, T. and Trevisan E. eds. L'altro visto dall'altro, Letteratura Araba ed Ebraica a confronto, Milan, Cortina Libraria. Parfitt, T. Journey to the Vanished City, The Search for a Lost Tribe of Israel, New York, Random House. Parfitt, T. The Jews of Arab Countries and Iran, Zionist Federation of Great Britain and Ireland. Parfitt, T. The Jews of Africa and Asia, London, Minority Rights Group. Parfitt, T. The 13th Gate, Travels Among the Lost Tribes of Israel, London, Weidenfeld and Amp. Nicholson. Parfitt, T. The Jews in Palestine, 1800 to 1882, Royal Historical Society Studies in History, Woodbridge, published for the Royal Historical Society by Boyd L. Parfitt, T. Operation Moses, The Untold Story of the Secret Exodus of the Falasha Jews from Ethiopia, London, Weidenfeld and Nicholson. Parfitt, T. and Abramson A. The Great Transition, The Recovery of the Lost Centers of Modern Hebrew Literature, Totowa N. J. Roman and Amp. Allen Held. Parfitt, T. and Kessler D. The Falashas, The Jews of Ethiopia, London, Minority Rights Group. Parfitt, T. and Abramson G. Great Tranquility, Questions and Answers. New York, Harper and Ampro. Documentaries. Parfitt, T. Tudor Parfitt and the Lost Tribes of Israel, Director Tim Gaunt. Parfitt, T. TEDx Talk Exploring Religion, Genetics and Identity. Parfitt, T. The Lost Tribe, PBS WLRN Channel 17, Director Tim Long. Parfitt, T. The Black Jews of South Africa and the Lost Ark of the Covenant, Director Eugene Bota, SABC. Parfitt, T. Quest for the Lost Ark, Director Martin Kemp, Channel 4, History Channel. Parfitt, T. To the Ends of the Earth, Search from the Sons of Abraham, Director Chris Hale, Channel 4, Nova. Parfitt, T. The Longest Exile, BBC producer Julian Hale. Parfitt, T. King Solomon's Tribe, BBC producer Julian Hale. Parfitt, T. The Twice Promised Land, three-part documentary to mark the 40th anniversary of the State of Israel, BBC producer Steve Sakur.